All right, everybody. Yes, I know I'm wearing the Packer hat as promised, and I didn't realize I was wearing a Packers sweatshirt. So, yeah, for you sports fans out there that do watch these videos, fire away with the Packer jokes. It's that kind of season. Anyways, okay, so my first movie review for Christmas is going to be a movie that I actually have a lot of personal nostalgic ties to. The 2004 classic Polar Express. Yeah, I think the title card kind of gave it away a second ago, so I don't know why Anyway, so I think before I get into what I think works and what doesn't in this movie, I think I just want to kind of say a story about how I ended up seeing this movie. This movie came out back in 2004, and I remember seeing the trailers for it. I remember seeing the train, the shots of the kids in the North Pole, and all that good stuff. And I remember it was around that time that my dad used to be in the Navy when I was a kid. He went to the Navy right out of college, and fast forward to 2003, 2004, dad went on a 6 month deployment and he wasn't able to be around during the holidays. And my mom and I did a bunch of stuff on the weekends to try and take our minds off things. And what we did do is that we went to go see movies at this movie theater. I can't remember the address of it. I remember the building, that the shopping center and the theater. It's still there. I just can't remember what it's called. Um, so anyway, we went to see about we would either rent a movie or we would go out to a theater on a Friday and we'd watch the movie. And Polar Express was one of the theaters. And so yeah, it does kind of have some personal ties to me, but I'm not really. I do like this movie, but I'm not gonna let my personal nostalgia, make me nearsighted and unable to see a clear vision. Instead, I'm going to put on my reality glasses instead of nostalgia goggles and give you a good review. Yes, that's dorky. It's me. Deal with it. Anyways, um, so I think the first thing I might want to mention is that something I didn't notice at first, but when I watched the movie again and after watching a Jamboriki's review on YouTube, the movie does kind of have some religious overtones in the sense that, well, I'd say they're more undertones because they're not as heavy-handed. The idea that this kid doesn't believe in Santa and everyone's kind of trying to everyone else seems to be believing in the spirit of Santa Claus and Christmas and all that stuff. And this one kid, whose name is Hero Boy, that's one complaint I can just get right out of the way with the characters right now is that aside from one of the kids, Billy, no one else has a character name in the movie. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, the conductor has a name, just the conductor, and everyone else is just kind of given a non-descriptive, non-specific name, and I don't really understand why that's the case. It it is a minor complaint. I just don't understand what the point is of not giving a character a name. You know, I mean, at least with something like Jason Bourne, he had amnesia and he was working his way to figure out his identity. But in this case, there's no reason for the kids not to know their names or not to use them. That minor that's something else that I don't need to get into. Um, so I think what the movie is trying to get across is that yeah, it's mainly in a way it's this kid slowly accepting the spirit and the magic of Christmas, much like how people like myself kind of slowly get to understand and start to believe in the ideas presented in whatever religion you may have. And now I'm still a skeptic on some of the religious claims in the Bible, being a Catholic myself, but I'm not completely drinking the Kool-Aid. I do believe in the good stuff and the benevolence in the religion, and I think that's what they're doing here in this movie, is that they're trying to get you to embrace the sweet benevolence of Christmas and the idea of giving, believing in something greater than yourself, and sort of a sense of spiritual satisfaction. Because in the movie, as you look at this, the kid isn't really, no one's really hammering it into his head. It's just after crazy spectacular event after spectacular event, the kid slowly starts to naturally and progressively come to the conclusion that Santa Claus is real, Christmas spirit is real, finding Jesus right there. So I think it was done in a way where it is kind of obvious but not painfully obvious. They're doing it in just enough of an obvious way where you can understand what's going on, but no one's obnoxiously shoving it in your face. And I do applaud the movie for that, because I think a lot of movies, I think it would be, I think for some movies it'd be a little too easy to be obnoxiously obvious with this message, but this one kind of found that balance of being obvious while also being respectful to other people. And that's right there. And the animation, this was the motion first movie to be motion captured all the way through from Robert Zemeckis. And I will say this, I didn't really notice that the characters looked creepy until I watched it last night. And when I was watching it, I was like, okay, this kind of looks a little too much like video game territory. And that kind of leads me to another question, which is, why couldn't they just animate this movie in the same style as Pixar or the type of animation you see in Shrek? Why go for this weird motion capture look when you could just do a computer animated? It is a computer animated movie. I just don't see why you didn't try to do something that was more realistically cartoony. Like something like Toy Story or The Incredibles. I don't know why you couldn't try going with that route. And the characters, it's weird because I've seen movies where the actor's facial expression carries the right emotion, but the line delivery fails. In this movie, it seems like a little bit of uncanny valley. Like, the voice acting is pretty good, but the character's animation doesn't quite convey what the actor is trying to say. You know, it's like a character will sound really passionate and angry over something, but then the face looks too rigid and can't really emote that as well. And I think that kind of goes back to how this was the first movie to be motion captured all the way through. And I think it's also kind of like how in Toy Story, the human characters and the dog characters don't, the human characters and the dog didn't look quite right, but it was the first time doing that technology. I think, considering this is the first film to be all motion captured instead of using that as just an effect, I think that's what kind of threw him off a little bit. Anyways, so there's that. The animation can be a little creepy at times, but it didn't really bother me all that much. Um, and I think another thing I'll say is that what I like about this movie is that it's aimed at kids, but it doesn't really dwell on too many action scenes all that much. I mean, it's a Christmas movie. Christmas isn't really known for action unless you think of Die Hard. Um, but what I like about it is that it does sort of explore the relationships of the characters, even though the characters don't have a name, so it's a little hard to get attached to them. You still feel the camaraderie between the main three: Billy, the hero kid, and the hero girl. So yeah, you do kind of see that sense of bonding right there, and it is kind of cute how the lead heroine develops bonds with everyone she comes across, and she's very sweet and motherly to Billy when Billy was kind of this sad, depressed kid living on the outskirts of town. So there is kind of a sweet message also in there about how friendship can turn your life around and give you a happier uh, feeling about yourself and your esteem and all that stuff. So it is the movie is pretty much about the magic of Christmas and coming together and loving each other and all that good stuff. So it is really sweet in that regard. And Now, to keep the kids entertained, there are a few action scenes in the movie, and there's two that I really enjoy. One is when the hero boy is trying to return the lead girl's ticket to her, and he ends up meeting this hobo on top of a train that skis down the roof of the cars while the kid's holding on for dear life. That was pretty fun, and that was pretty suspenseful because if the kid didn't jump off in time, he'd smack right into a cliff and die. Um, so that was a fun sequence. The scene where the train starts speeding uncontrollably through an accident in the main part of the engine. That whole scene where they're going up and down those crazy hills, that was just even as a kid and even up to now, 14 years later, I'm watching that scene and I'm thinking someone's got to make a roller coaster out of those scenes, or at least the train going up and down the hill at batshit crazy speed, because that looks like it would be a lot of fun. I would definitely love to see them turn that into a theme park ride at some point. But then again, since the movie isn't that, I don't think the movie's as famous as other Christmas films. So 10-year-old to 24-year-old me might be living in a fantasy world where the sky isn't quite the right color, apparently, I guess. Um, but overall, I think the movie was really good. Tom Hanks does play several characters in this movie. And yeah, Tom Hanks, I think he outperforms. He's Tom Hanks. He's going to outperform everybody in the room, most likely. And he does just that. And the movie, I think for people my age, I think the movie is kind of a contemporary classic, And I think the last thing I'll say about the movie before I get into one last nostalgic story is that I feel like this movie, if you can get past the weird animation on some of the characters, it is a very touching story. And I think Josh Groban's song at the very end, "If You Just Believe," I think is what you call it. Um, that is kind of it. Some people might think that's a sappy song, but I think it's kind of a very powerful, emotionally strong tune. And yeah, it just kind of it's just a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling when you turn the DVD off or leave the theater or wherever you're seeing the movie. And I remember when I was a kid, I can't remember how long I had this wish, but I remember there were many a Christmas after that movie came out where I just remember thinking to myself that I wish I would have a dream on Christmas Eve going into Christmas morning where I would dream I was on the Polar Express and go through all those crazy adventures. I always wanted to have that dream that night so I could wake up and have that as a, well, I'd say icing on the cake, but I would say icing on the cakes because there's a lot of desserts that do come around the holidays, you know. So I always wanted that dream, and it never happened. But I always innocently hoped that I would have a dream of being on the Polar Express. So that was kind of a cute little story that I have attached to this movie, and also my step cousin Samuel, when he was a little boy, really loved the movie as well. So I do have fond memories of watching that movie with him. So there's a lot of sentimental value with this film. There are some flaws in it, as I've mentioned, but I do think that this is a very sweet natured Christmas classic. So happy holidays, everybody.